appreciation? Should you invest for appreciation? We see this in a lot of the comments on BiggerPockets. We see it on Facebook groups when it comes to investing. People say things like, the stock market gets an average return of 10% a year. Thinking, if you're not investing in dividends, that you're investing in stocks, that is appreciation of the stocks. In real estate, the average annual appreciation is 5%. Is appreciation guaranteed? Meaning, if you invest, can you invest for appreciation? I want to clarify a couple of steps here, because you are going to hear investors talk about how they invested for appreciation, how it made sense to them. And I want to point out the difference between, I agree that in that situation, it was the right thing to do. But I'm going to talk about when you're starting to invest, should you, that new investor who doesn't have a portfolio yet, who is trying to reach financial freedom, if you're watching my content, that is literally the point of my content. My goal is to teach the average individual that you can reach financial freedom, make work completely optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position, which is what I did. And at some point, you might hear an investor in my position say, I made what they call an appreciation play. You invested for appreciation. So when you start investing and you hear people talking about their wealth, their net worth, how rich they are, there's a distinct difference between cash flow and appreciation. Cash flow can be from your job, selling your life 1 hour at a time. It can be from a side hustle. It can be dividend stocks. It can be rental income. It's the money that's left over after paying your expenses. This is cash flow. The goal is to get what the IRS calls passive cash flow, where you have income that comes in that doesn't require you selling your life 1 hour at a time. So if you hear somebody like me talking about in the year 2020, I made about $800,000. If you just hear the number, that seems huge. Like, that's a very wealthy, in my opinion, what I would have grown up hearing is a very wealthy person in a year making that much. But what was my income? Right? My income from a W-2 wasn't $800,000. My income from passive income from rentals wasn't $800,000. My appreciation, which was 24%, in 2020, 2021, we saw the biggest appreciation that I've seen in a long time. I had 24% one year, 19% the next. So if you take my W-2 income, which I no longer have, but I had then, and my rental income and my appreciation, I made $800,000. I couldn't eat that $800,000, not unless I sold properties. My actual income that I can live on is the cash flow. So even when you have appreciation, that's not what makes you wealthy. And when you look at a timeline, they're market-wide, over a long enough period of time, appreciation will happen. Not because assets are worth more money, but because it takes more money to buy the same valued asset. When you have inflation, the dollar loses buying power. So when you lose buying power, it takes more dollars to buy the property, to buy the stock, to buy the business that you're looking at. Whenever you're looking at acquiring, it takes more of the currency because the currency has less value. So it will seem like appreciation is happening. When you hear an investor say, I purchased this place, I made an appreciation play, and I am killing it because I gained this much appreciation, it sounds like that's what you should do. You're never going to hear the investors often, not never, but you're often not going to hear investors say, I made an appreciation play and here's how much I lost. Right? Those are the stories that we don't share, we don't brag about. The reason it makes sense for them, like Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time or Matt the Lumberjack Landlord can make an investment looking at forced equity, gaining appreciation by doing renovations, gaining appreciation by holding it for a long enough period of time, because they have a portfolio that produces cash flow that is beyond what it takes them to live their lives. And they took a portion of it. Michael Zuber took 1% of his net worth and purchased crypto. Matt, the Lumberjack Landlord, joining us now, unless that's Michael Newton. No, it's Matt. Howdy. Has a portfolio of a size to be able to take a portion of it and buy a property. If it appreciates, great. If it doesn't, if you lost money on that small portion of the portfolio, who would care? So you're often going to hear investors talk about their appreciation plays. That is not the investor who doesn't have a portfolio, doesn't have cash flow to make up for the mistakes, and can't handle the added decades to your investing if you invest for appreciation in the beginning. If you look at any point in time, we talk about the 2009, 2010, 11, and 12 housing crash. 2011 was the bottom, 2008 is when the crash started. So we're talking 4 to 5 years to go from peak to trough, top to bottom of the housing crash. For several years, most people would talk about not wanting to buy properties in 2008 because of how expensive they were. Well, now in 2023, look at your market. Who would love to buy a property for a 2008 price? So even at the point in time, before as far as I can remember, the largest housing crash that took years to go, the largest annual drop was 8.9%. But overall, we saw markets, some local markets dropped a lot if their specific area was hit harder. But for the majority of the market, we saw that 20 to 30% decrease. We saw states like Texas didn't have the housing crash of 2008 as bad because they didn't have all the toxic debt. They weren't allowing as many adjustable rate loans. So it wasn't the price that caused the crash. It was the debt structure that did that. So the point of this video is when you hear guaranteed appreciation, when you see a syndication make an offer and we say, if the average increase in appreciation is 5%, historically, the last 3 years we've seen 19, 24, and in Seattle, they saw 30% appreciation one of those years. They'll project forward a 5 to 10% appreciation. It doesn't work if your debt 3 to 5 years from now is based on that appreciation happening. Just like it doesn't work if you're basing that purchase on rents increasing over the next number of years too. So anytime you hear an investor talk about is appreciation guaranteed, how long of a timeline are they talking? Because eventually, yeah, it's kind of guaranteed. And second, what's the size of their portfolio and what percentage of it are they putting at risk? So that came from a question where somebody reached out and talked about how they want to invest in real estate. They don't care about the cash flow. They actually don't care if they lose a little bit of money every month because in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, the appreciation will be guaranteed and they'll be fine. If your portfolio is large enough, sure. But if that's a person just starting, even if they don't care about cash flow, the cash flow when you're starting to me is more important. If you have $500,000 a year annual income, and you're buying $100,000 houses, yeah, $200 to $400 a month isn't going to make a dent. But if you're making $50,000 a year and you can add $200 to $400 per month in increased revenue after expenses and after setting aside for future repairs and maintenance, now I wouldn't want to invest for appreciation at all. Howdy, Matt. Thank you for joining us. Hey, we might do a thing here. I was going to ask. I had a guy reach out to me today who I don't think knows anything about my content. Okay. And he might join the live stream. We'll see. I was looking for the content here. But if we did that, I was going to have you cover a little bit of your start to finish chronology. And I would do a little bit of my start to finish chronology. 2 people who reached financial freedom, similar paths, different strategies, same strategies, different tactics.
Sure. Happy to.
Have you ever invested to make an appreciation play?
No.
No. With the portfolio the size that it is now, are you still not thinking about it? Okay. Makes sense. I'm not either.
Yeah, no. I want cash flow. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like so there's a deal that I'm working on right now that has Kilimanjaro level upside. Like tons of upside. And I'm still trying to figure out how to structure the deal where I am able to capture cash flow. Call me crazy, but I don't like writing checks for my real estate on a monthly basis, So, and certainly not where something can impact me. We just had a roof that we had to do. That's a big one, right? But we had a hot water heater that we had to do. And it was still $1,800. And it's like, if you're making $300 or $400 a month or $300 a month on a property, poof, like that's a lot of money. That's half the year's money. And that's if nothing else happens or goes wrong. So yeah, it's just for me, I want cash flow. We now are investing a lot. We're reinvesting a lot in our portfolio because it's what our greatest return on capital is. There's a video hitting, I think it hits Wednesday or Thursday on my channel, where I'm talking about how right now I'm getting 30% returns in my real estate investment. And I share all the secrets right there. That a lot of people don't look at it the way that I look at it. And, and again, I think that, is there proof that it's always appreciated? Yeah. But I can tell you there are areas that collapsed in 08 and 09 that finally hit their returns in like 2018, 2019. Now, the problem with that was there were rents that were down, the rents, and the rents weren't down a whole lot, but they were down, a few percentage points. Again, not a big deal. But the problem was they were flat for a decade, or they were flat for 8 years. You know what wasn't flat for 8 years? My taxes, my water bills, my insurance. The repairs on the properties were getting more expensive every year. So, when these people are out there talking about how rents are going to crash or rents are going to go down, listen, that's noise. What ends up happening is it does end up giving you margin pressure. None of them would actually know that because none of them are actually business owners. None of them actually know what margin is. But that's where you run into the problem. And that's where you start to get what's called margin compression, meaning you're making less money on your deal. That's where it starts to happen, is because all your expenses continue to rise and your rents stay flat. So that's what happens. And then they're like, well, but if it's inflation adjusted, blah, 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 but whatever. No, you weren't thinking that either. You can barely spell inflation. Not you then. So.
No, if I went to spell inflation, I would just say it into my text and have it spelled correctly, because that's not my thing. Hopefully nobody's here to learn grammar, because that's not going to be right.
Yeah.
I want to say thanks to Phil for the super chat in the beginning. In the intro, what I'm doing is about 6 months to a year later, that intro will be its own little video where I'm cutting out the intros and releasing those for the people who don't watch the long live streams. So I tried not to reference 4th of July in the beginning of the video. So happy 4th of July to everybody in the US. If you're in the UK, not so much, but hopefully everybody ends today with the same number of fingers that they started today. There's a question here from Duchess talking about when you start the video, it seems like I'm mid-sentence. The starting of live streams on YouTube is not perfect. You'll notice this every morning. I watch Zuber's live update every morning, and it always, I could sometimes be 2 minutes into the video or 30 seconds into the video, or I'm waiting for him to start. So sorry, that doesn't work better. There is a question here about somebody purchased, Matthew, howdy Matthew, bought a $100,000 building for 7.9. Does that count as appreciation? So by definition, I wouldn't call that appreciation. I would call that purchased equity. Appreciation to me is you've purchased it at a value. So its value is 100,000. In the future, when it's worth more than 100,000, that's appreciation. That
yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, so one of the common misnomers is that we don't want appreciation or we hate appreciation. No, we just don't account for it in our numbers. That's what makes our deals stronger. That's what makes them more resilient. When you purchase a deal and over the 3 or 5 years, you can't control how much the asset increases. You can get lucky and be in an area that all of a sudden just got an Amazon distribution center and boom, like that, you're up 25% a year for the next 3 years. Can absolutely happen. We see it happen all the time. However, it's not accounted for in the spreadsheet to be part of the math of your income. That's what we're really talking about.
Right. And the conversation I was having that kind of made me think I want to make an appreciation video. And I don't want to give out too many details because people might figure out who I was talking to. They said, I gained this much appreciation over these years. So in the next same number of years, look at what will happen to my net worth. And that told me, red flag, you're looking at this too linear to common sense, like you see the numbers, but not what happens year to year and what's going to happen with appreciation. I see this is somebody's first live. Cool Reader 5, first time to live. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out with us. The way this works is I try to get to every question I can. I sometimes have guests that come that know more than me, like Millennial Mike or Matt or Beth Traverso. And we have, again, the same goal, financial freedom, but different ways of approaching it. Duchess is replacing most of your roofs with metal. It's close to a year's gross rents. So a lot of times when people talk about expenses like your roof or expenses like Matt mentioned his water heater, when you're on, there's people, Zuber says this all the time, you can go broke buying cheap, right? So if you buy really cheap properties and a water heater goes out, right? If you're setting aside 10% of gross rents for repairs, that's 10% for several months versus if you buy, you know, I'm not saying go out and buy $1 million single family houses and expect to rent them for a profit. But if you're buying duplexes in the 300,000 to 900,000 range, you're actually putting out a bunch of money to acquire these properties, even if in just the down payments. Now 10% of gross rents adds up pretty fast, so that when you do have those repairs, it doesn't feel like it's coming out of your pocket. It always feels like it's out of your pocket in the first 6 months before you're building your reserves from that property. But you get to a point where you had a water heater that went out was $1,800. Ours are my service is very similar. It's about, I think I had one that was 16 and one that was like 1720 by the time I was done. So we're right in the same range. But I had 4 water heaters, 4 something else. Like I haven't had any water heaters go out ever. And then all of a sudden I had 4 within a month. Oh, and refrigerators. It was just, I mean, probably since I never had any go out, it was time for them to go out. But I look forward to that. I'm kind of excited about that because my tenants paid for a new refrigerator in that unit. My tenants paid for new water heaters, right? So when I put a roof on, I purchased a 4-plex one time and put a roof on right at purchase. That came out of cost to acquire funds. I replaced the roof at a single family house, and that came out of the money from gross rents over the years that I had that property. So I looked forward to the tenants paying for that.
I still, for the record, I still don't like replacing my water heaters. I don't care who paid for it.
The water heaters, well, it gives me 8 to 12 years, depending on its location, of not having to think about it again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
rather keep my money.
I'm making sure I'm not missing any questions here. Hit the like button. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. Every time you hit the like button, somebody retires before Matt.
Yeah, true.
Andy Borsch. Howdy. I already asked this to Matt, but I want to hear Dion's response. In your first house hack, should we have the mortgage payment coming from our personal bank account? So I don't know that my answer will be the one you want to hear. I'm probably going to mess this up because I have some memory issues, but I will say 16 units, but I have 18 units now. So with 18 units, here's what my business structure looks like. Long list of reasons for no LLC. 1 checking account. I had 2 for a little when I had over 250,000 in cash because I wanted to be FDIC insured, diversified, but I put all that money into this new duplex. And now 1 checking account, 1 saving account, 1 credit card, 1 Excel spreadsheet with a tab for income and expenses. That's it, right? So if you say, should it come out of your personal bank account? They still are. I actually sit back. This is my favorite week, the first week of the month. I sit back and I open up the banking app and I watch it go rent, mortgage, rent, mortgage, rent, mortgage. And it just kind of plays vertical pong for the next week and ends $17,000 higher with another 3,400 or so set aside into the repairs account. Which right now is capped. So that's going into the next investment purchase account. We can make this as simple or as complex as we want to. And I have been through an audit. My spreadsheet was designed by my CPA. It had the information that they need. I paid the $140 for the year to have the CPA go through the audit. And all I really had to do was provide documents when asked for it. I didn't even personally interact with IRS. I was just told, I think the audit ended with me getting $1,400. So it's like, you should do that again next year.
That's a nice 10Xer. Good for you.
John, it made me talk to my CPA. Go, hey. John Williams, Dion, question for your latest house hack purchase. Did your roommate take over your unit, assuming all of your units, or move? Roommates there, rented out room. So I don't want to say that I do rent by the room, because I have one place where there's 3 roommates, 1 lease. This is a place where I had roommates. I moved out, renting the room that I moved out of. We already had a tenant in there at $1,000 a month for the room, shared living space. I didn't advertise for it. I personal networked for it, right? I'm in a group of people around here. There's always a list of people waiting for the next unit to open. So the move out increased cash flow by $1,000 a month with no added expenses, because all utilities there are in the tenant's name, so it has no impact on me. There's no more wear and tear happening on the house. I was living there. They are living there. Moved into the new house hack. It's going to be months or a year to get the other unit ready. But no mortgage. It was an all cash purchase. This might be a burr. Once it's up and running, I might go and look at what interest rates are, take out a 50% LTV, get, probably at 50% LTV, 80% of my money back out to put to work on the next deal. And that's like very conservative. I assume that because a duplex up the street that's in worse shape went for $750, I paid $4. I'm going to put probably $100 into it now that I'm looking at everything, $50 to $100. I estimated at least 80. Contractors keep telling me I'm going over on estimate, but no, especially since I believe if he makes it over, and this is a very strong test of my will. I'm in a duplex. It's my first over under, right? So I prefer side by side because it's helps with limiting tenant turnover, and less noise complaints. Plumbing issue only affects 1 tenant, right? It's my theory. Seems to work with 4 tenant turnovers in over a decade. It's an over and under. I took off the siding on the lower section because I'm going to redo it. It had some flaws, and then I found a section we're going to frame a little bit. But with the wall off, you could see through where the plumbing is that there's a basement. And in the basement, there is a light that is on. So there's a light that's on all the time. Probably been on longer than LED lights have been invented. So I don't think it's an LED light. So that's not good. A haunted wheelchair and a couch, I think. So what it looks like when we're looking through the little bit of visibility that we have. So Millennial Mike is going to come over and we're going to Ghostbusters style, go through, and there's no point of access. Style. There's no windows, no doors, no stairs. We're literally going to have to break through the flooring to figure out how to get into that third. And it might just be one small section. I think it'll be like when Geraldo Rivera opened up Al Capone's vault and they found an old Coke bottle or something. There'll be nothing there at all, but who knows what we'll find. Financial firefighter, aloha. Hope you're enjoying the 4th. Austin is here. I don't know if that's the same Austin. Let me know if you're the gentleman that I kind of met today, virtually. If you were in a duplex having your rent paid for and receiving BAH, would you put that BAH towards the mortgage, or would you save BAH and put down another rental? Great question. And I think if this is the Austin, we'll probably do a version during this live of your chronology, how you got to financial freedom and how I did it. So if that's the Austin that I met today, thanks for making it still live. If it's not Austin, I'm glad you're here too. So when I had the first duplex, my first house hack, I was living in an apartment, right? I was renting out my house to get rental income on my tax returns, and I moved into the duplex. Took what I was paying for the apartment from $1,500 down to $300. So I was contributing $300 towards the mortgage. I think your question is, would you take the BAH and add it to the payment on the mortgage, meaning you see a benefit to paying the mortgage off sooner or faster? And that is a Dave Ramsey kind of theory, that having a paid off mortgage or paying down the debt is a good thing. And to me, if I focused on paying off debt, I would still work for another decade. I'd have to work for at least another decade, because paying off debt that is at somewhere between 3 and 6% interest rate, depending on when you purchased it. Right now, it might be 6 or 7 if you're house hacking, but when I purchased mine, they were 6%, and then I refinanced in 2020 to 3%. So at 6% or 3%, I wouldn't want it paid off, because I can buy the next rental. That was the end of your question. Or would you buy it on the next rental? If you can get a 10% return on the next rental, or let's say you only get a 5% return, just 5% on the rental, or you can pay down the 6% on the mortgage. Seems like the 6% is a gain over the 5%, but the 5% on the new rental is adding appreciation on 4 times if you put down 25% on what you invested. The tenant's paying off another mortgage. You start another depreciation cycle on your income. Like, the benefits of adding the rental, in my opinion, always trump paying down a mortgage at the beginning, when you're in the growth phase. When you're in stabilization phase, when you're past financial freedom, paying off some mortgages might make sense. I made the mistake. I consider this a huge mistake. There was a period of time between 2013 and 17 or so where you were only allowed to have 4 mortgages in your name. And I wasn't very educated. So I got to 4, and then I focused and paid one off, and then added another. My goal was going to be stay at 4. They raised that to 10 currently. I wouldn't have done that. I would have got to 4, then I would have researched DSCR, asset-based, seller financing, other options outside of those 4 conventional. And I didn't know the thing that I've learned from Matt, the lumberjack landlord, who's here today, who last count had 137 units. That's changing soon with your next deal. You've been investing 23 years?
21, 22.
21 years. Okay. Right. So you survived the 2008 housing crash. That's why I appreciate you coming on here. A wealth of knowledge. But if you're house hacking, that limit of 4 loans in your name, or currently 10 loans in your name, doesn't apply. As long as you're owner occupying, you can get that another conventional owner occupied loan above and beyond that. Newen Reptiles, cool name. Howdy, thank you for the super chat. I'm going to look through really quick and see if I miss a question from you.
I didn't see one.
Okay, so if there's one coming, because sometimes it won't fit where the super chat goes, I will keep an eye out for it. Thank you very much. Super chat, it's appreciated. That lets YouTube know that somebody likes the content and shares it with possibly more people. I totally understand today's the 4th, and people on the East Coast, it's probably, it's not quite fireworks time. Like 10 o'clock is probably the best fireworks time, so it's not there yet. Well, there's been fireworks at my new place 3 nights that I've been here already, like 3 massive shows. There's this Bremerton Bridge blast, something they did last night. And it's next to a Navy base, so I get, reveille, flag, colors, all the stuff throughout the day. It's weird. John Williams. I think I missed a question here from John Williams. Do you have a question for your latest house hack purchase? Oh, no, the roommates did not move with me. TT, I'll make sure not to ask about LLCs this time. Howdy, I appreciate it. How long do your listings sit before you change the price, or what is the average listing time for you guys? Do you provide washer dryers in your units? So first question, how long do my listings sit before I would change the price? There's a step before listing and changing price that I would do, and I take this from apartment complexes. I think in most cases, if something sat for 2 to 3 weeks, I would start thinking, okay, there's probably an issue with my pricing. First step is to offer a concession. Half a month's rent off, or a month's rent free, keep the rent where it is so it stays at that high point, and it's easier to make a small adjustment maybe next year or the year after and get the rent where I want it also. My longest vacancy so far was 4 days. And that was just because the tenant left and the other one wasn't ready. I had 4 days to get everything done. Like I said earlier in the video, there's a list of people waiting for rentals to open. So you can build a list through your network. I tend to not do that by posting on platforms and building a list of people, because I won't have a turnover soon enough to use that information. Right. For a while, I posted on apartments.com. And if you want, so I diversify my tenant base. So here's a nugget that Matt, you started doing last year. You kind of had your teeth kicked in a little with the 2008 housing crash, and you thought, I don't like Section 8. I just, I don't like them. But if I had some of my properties rented to Section 8, okay, in your area, that's the way it is. In my area, I love Section 8 in one county. In the other county, not to call them out by name, but Pierce County, Washington, sucks. The Section 8, the whole housing authority there. It's terrible response time. Not proactive agents. I don't know, whatever it was, my experience was very negative. Thurston County, Washington, awesome. But I want about 1/3 of my properties rented to Section 8, about 1/3 to military, and 1/3 working or retired. So I was using apartments.com. I'm now using Hemlane because I plan on traveling more. But if I want a military tenant, right, each military installation has an agency that handles housing. So the easiest way to find the one in your area is to contact the MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation on your base, and ask them who handles housing. It's not going to be them, but they're going to know who does, because each base, it'll be somebody different. If you advertise there, you're probably going to get a military person. If I want a Section 8 tenant and I call the housing authority and I tell the agent, I email the agent saying, this is my listing that becomes available on Tuesday. That's probably who's going to apply first. So for me, that would be the thing. 2 to 3 weeks, I would start thinking, okay, it might be time to make a concession, and then rent adjustment can happen later. How does it work for you, Matt?
It really depends on what the strategy was with the unit. Some units that we have where we have density will actually try and set the market. So we have a unit that we just tried to set the market with. And so the idea was, what was our lead flow? What was the quality of that lead flow? And so we tried it at a week at 12% higher than any other unit in the building was rented for. Lead flow was good for the week. The quality was suspect. The quality wasn't very good. And so I said, all right, we'll give it one more week. And we'll see what that looks like, because we knew that we would still have them in for August 1. And we had done a bunch. The other tenant had left early. We were able to start the work, but we still knew there was work left to be done. We left it that way for one more week, and we have a tenant that's going to go under lease. And they want to move like now. They don't have an eviction. They have a high 700s credit score. And so, yeah, we're going to set the market. We're going to set the market with that rental in a large building. So I would say usually it really depends on what you're trying to do. But yeah, if I don't see the movement that I see, I would talk like what Dion did, which is, you give some sort of a concession. But yeah, I mean, that's not really ever been a problem for me based on our strategy of how we write ads. We never have a problem having a list of people, usually qualified people to pull from too. So never an issue.
So that's awesome. I'm trying to get this right in my head.
Yeah.
This is Austin. So we're going to get to as many questions as we can. So after this next question, we're going to cover your chronology, who you are, how you got to where you are, and what was your timeline like, and then we'll cover mine, and we'll do this kind of a very abbreviated version. So I will try to keep mine to like 3 minutes if I can. You can do, however long it takes for you to do yours. So Austin knows who we are, and if anybody else is finding us for the first time. But Cal Newen Reptiles has a question for you, and he did the super chat. So I want to put this here. So if anybody has a question you want to get to the top, super chat's the way to get the attention. Matt, they live close to you in Boston Metro West. Yeah. Not close, but in your area.
Close enough. And
they're closing on a house in 10 days. They're thinking about renting out for Section 8. How does that process work in your area?
So Matt, so it really becomes state different. The states are different. New Hampshire and Mass are different. And then usually it's done also by county and then town. So you can have state housing in New Hampshire. You can have county. You can also have town. Usually it's town and state. And it's an individual housing authority. And not every town has a housing authority. In Massachusetts, here's what I would tell you. I would tell you that it costs you nothing to talk to Section 8 and have them come out and look at your unit. Cost you nothing. And then you have the option, once your unit's quote unquote approved, you have the option of renting it out to Section 8. What I will tell you is, just like Dion said, the quality of the housing authority that you're working with is quite frankly the most important. I have one housing authority that I'm pretty sure has been infiltrated by Xi Jinping. And they have no clue how to do anything. They're completely mindless morons. And every single thing that comes up is a landlord issue. It's not a tenant issue, regardless of if I can prove that it was the tenant that caused the issue. And so at that point, I'm done pissing in the wind. I'm done having conversations, teaching them logic. I'm done managing that tenant because they're a shithead. So what I would tell you is it really, can you tell I just had a conversation with them today? One of the things that I would tell you is that's really what you have to understand. So what I would do is I would get on whatever town you're in and the area that you're in. I would get on that town in that area. I see you're doing work over there, Dion. I would get on in the town in that area, and I would talk to other Section 8 landlords and ask them what their experience was with that, with that housing authority. Because it could be an expensive and painful lesson if it's a bad housing authority and they're difficult to deal with. So my recommendation to you is quickly get into a Facebook group, talking about Section 8 in that community with that housing authority, and learn as much as you possibly can. You got 10 days. So you have plenty of time, because you can't do anything until 10 days from now anyway. And then it's going to probably take, believe it or not, it'll take 30 to 45 days to get on the list for Section 8, where they then pay you a whole lot less money in your area. Because I'm pretty sure that's what the numbers are in your area. It's going to take you some time. But they will come, because so you say they won't come until you have choose a tenant. No, not necessarily. You can actually tell them, I'm going to put a unit in the system, and so I need to get it approved beforehand. And then they will come out and they'll do that.
So 3 things really quick. John Williams says World Boss is up in 16 minutes. I'm going to miss it. That's unfortunate. You don't have to understand what that means, Matt. Don't worry. The other thing is the chronology on Section 8. So you get a unit rent ready. You contact the housing authority, which could be a nonprofit in your area. You say, I have a unit I want to list with Section 8. They're going to send an inspector out to make sure that everything is safe, functional, and clean, and that each unit you're calling a bedroom, each number of bedrooms you're saying the unit has, qualifies as a bedroom. Right? It has to have a closet. It has to be 100 square feet. Some places it might be 80 square feet, but in mine it's 100. It has to have 2 forms of egress, so 2 doors, door and window. It has to, in some places, have a source of heat, source of cold. If there's anything else, the closet has to have a door. Like, they're going to just check all that kind of stuff. They will make sure all doors and windows function. They don't want it to be fancy. They're not coming to say it's not a pretty unit. They're just making sure it's safe, functional, clean. Then you're approved, and now you advertise and find a tenant. There are some areas that require all units are available for the Section 8 program, depending on your local legislation. A way to speed up the process is when they inspect, if they find any deficiencies, they're going to say, okay, we're going to reschedule, come back out and look once you fixed them. That might be a 2 to 3 week wait or longer in your area, depending on how busy they are. So ask the inspector, is it possible for me to take a video once I remedy the mistakes or the problems, send you an email with the video, and then you approve it? And that could cut off a couple of weeks on your timeline. And then you just screen your tenants just like anywhere else. I do 700 credit score, no evictions ever, Section 8 or non-Section 8. That eliminates a lot of the problems. If you rent in Gary, Indiana, where Millennial Mike has his, if they have over a 600 credit score, they're probably going to buy a house. And because houses are $30,000 to $80,000, it's a bit different than the $700,000 houses around me. So you know your local market for what works there. The other thing was to answer TT's second question, which I missed, was, do you provide washer dryers in your units? I did when I started. I no longer do. What I do now is I have a set that a previous tenant left behind that is not mine. I don't maintain or replace, but tenants, when they move in, are welcome to use them until they acquire their own, and then I'll put it back in storage. That's only been done once. Most times tenants just get their own or have their own. Less things for me to maintain. And then, okay, so Matt, your timeline from where you started and to financial freedom. Abbreviated version.
Timeline was early 20s. So I was 22 years old, I think, 22, 23. Couldn't afford a house that I wanted to get, and I didn't want to rent anymore. And so I had to get a roommate. So I found a friend of mine that wanted to live somewhere. I was like, yeah, that's cool. I bought it, my credit, my deposit, rented out the other place to him. And then thus was born the landlording thing. I was renting a room from a buddy, then here we go. I was renting a room for a buddy, and then I became the rentor, not the rentee. And so did that in my first place. It was a condo, owned it, then was going to get hit with a crushing $70,000 assessment. Brutal. And that's why I don't buy condos anymore. And ended up selling it and moving to a single family house, and again finding another roommate, and thus that trend continued. And then started realizing, hey, I can live for free. And so I did 9 house hacks over the next 13 years, and I bought a couple of other buildings in the process. And then the financial collapse happened, or market collapse, in 08, 9, and 10. And went from 8 paying tenants to 3 paying tenants to 1 paying tenant in the course of about 60 days. And literally had to save up money to evict people. And then so it took me about, because of the Great Recession, it took me about 10 or 12 years to really start to gain momentum. And now 137 units, 50 buildings, and enough cash flow to choke a donkey, if that were a thing.
Fair enough. How many times did you house hack?
9 and 13 years, 9 times in 13 years.
Okay.
And that was tries, dupes, and singles. It was singles in the beginning. It was tries, and then duplexes.
And your strategy included cash out refinances.
Yes.
Have you used home equity lines of credit?
Yes.
Sell for 1031?
Yes.
So you have done the strategy that is called recycling capital to grow your portfolio faster. As the appreciation happens, this video, I'm making a recording of this during the live stream. The live stream was based on appreciation being guaranteed. So you had a long enough period of appreciation to take the equity out, or your ability to add debt to an existing asset and purchase more, so that you have a large portfolio of 137 units. Cash flow that's so large, we don't like to mention it because we don't want to dishearten people. We want people to get started and actually do this. So Zuber says get to 4. If you Zuber's from 1 rental at a time, if you can get to 4 rentals, your retirement will be totally different. Now you'll have options of, do I want to have more or less? So here's the chronology for me. The confusing thing that most people might not have heard me say before. I don't want to be an investor. I am not an entrepreneur. I just don't want to work. I'm lazy. Like, I'm the laziest person on the planet. My family does tree work, logging residential trees. I joined the Marine Corps because that was easier. So I went in the Marine Corps because I wanted to have a retirement. I figured if you work 20 years somewhere, you can retire, you get paid, and you can retire. After Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized. Tried law enforcement after 2008 because of the recession, they downsized. So I kept getting my pensions taken away. So I decided to invest in real estate, to become a real estate investor. But again, I'm lazy. So I invest the lazy way. I was working full time. I had 3 young kids. When I got laid off from law enforcement, because during a recession, there's no more crime and we don't need cops anymore, I went to a truck driving company called Oak Harbor Freight Lines, was making about $115,000 a year, more than I was making as a cop. And they went on strike. So I found myself at 40 years old, found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name I didn't know existed until the divorce, a single parent with 3 kids. And started teaching people how to drive trucks, making $17 an hour. So $17 an hour income, tons of bad debt, 3 kids that depend on me for food and shelter and dad jokes. But I kept the house through the divorce. So it's the one benefit. Like, I've always been good at keeping the house for the kids, never been good at keeping a woman around. So a lot of bad debt, low income, couldn't qualify to buy a house, but I owned one. And I thought, if I buy another one, I can move into it and rent out my first house. And then I can buy another one and buy another one. But the lender said, you don't make enough, you can't qualify to buy a house unless you had some rental income on your tax returns. So what I did is I moved from my house into an apartment for 2 years. For 2 years, I lived in an apartment, rented out my house, got rental income on my tax returns. A little bit more money at work, started making money playing World of Warcraft, selling things online because I'm a nerd, and saved in those 2 years $28,000, got consistent income in the same industry. I had never worked in teaching before. Now I was in the CDL school for 2 years, so I had that so I can qualify for a loan. The rental income on my tax returns eliminated the problem for a debt to income ratio, made it almost irrelevant. But single family houses in my area don't cash flow. So I switched to duplexes. I purchased a duplex and moved in. People say, well, I can't house hack because I have kids. Well, we had our own fenced yard. Duplex was divided by garages in the middle, and we had just come from an apartment complex with 180 units. So to go from that to a duplex was better for the kids, I think. It took 2 more years to save up the down payment for the next duplex. So in 4 years, all I did was move to a duplex, moved to the apartment for 2 years, moved to a duplex for 2 years. Now I've got a single family house and 2 duplexes. I'm paying less for housing. My apartment was $1,500. The duplex I was paying $300. So I added $1,200 a month to my savings. Consistent income. Now it was about 1.5 years to buy the next duplex. Then at that point in time, you were limited to 4 mortgages in your name. So I focused and paid one off. I wouldn't have done that now. I would have switched to another owner occupied loan because you can go above 4, or I would have done DSCR loan, asset-based lending or seller financing. Once that one was paid off, got another one. I moved to my second house hack, which was a fourplex. I stayed there. I was being paid when I first moved in. I was being paid $1,700 a month to live there, making $800 a month on that duplex I just moved out of. So that one move added $2,500 a month to my cash flow, going from the duplex to the fourplex. Plus all of the other rentals started to increase because of the binder strategy, which is what, Austin, I'm actually most known for. I get my tenants to ask me to raise the rent. Actually, I have a free course on that. You can find it at diontalk.com. It's called the binder strategy. It's free. There's no fee. And after the fourplex, that was January 6, 2020, just before the pandemic, I got a fourplex. During the pandemic, at the November 2020, I purchased a triplex because during 2020, we could take out all the money from our retirement accounts. So I emptied mine and put it to work in a duplex, triplex. Which technically, it's a house with a duplex. One of them is an ADU. I don't know which. 2021, I added another duplex and retired in 2022. So I walked away from eventually working at the CDL school. I got demoted all the way down to president of the company. I had $2 million golden handcuffs, meaning if the company was ever sold, I'd make about $2 million. And I walked away from that because I had financial freedom for my rental properties. And my last purchase was 2021 May, and I just closed on my most recent purchase in June of 2023, which is the duplex that is a house hack BRRRR self-funded project. It's my first BRRRR. It's my first rehab. I invest a lazy way. I've never done a rehab. I buy properties that are rent ready or already occupied. And so now that I'm retired, financially free, my goal, like Matt's, is to show other people how we did it. Matt, you are super educated, right? You have a master's degree, obviously. Everyone that's here, right?
Yeah.
Austin,
Yeah.
Matt dropped out in the 8th grade.
9th, but who's counting?
9th grade.
Come on,
okay,
Dion.
so
I was there for the 8th. Come on.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, good job. I made it through high school because I wanted that 1.1 GPA that it takes to make it into the Marine Corps. And so that's my level of education. This isn't something that you have to be smart at. It's something you have to self-educate. And an example on how that works, and I'm going to get to the questions, but my nephew made it through high school with, again, whatever GPA was required to be on the football team. If it wasn't for football, he never would have went to school, but he had just enough to stay there and hated school and struggled with every class. Got out and went to massage therapy school and was valedictorian and went breezed through it because it was the subject he loved. I want financial freedom, came from real estate. So this is a subject I love to learn. But I think it's confusing to people when I say, I didn't want to own real estate. I didn't want to be an investor. I just don't want to be an entrepreneur. I just don't want to work. And if you don't want to work, the decade of putting your money to work so you never have to. And Austin, you are retiring soon from the military, so you're going to have TRICARE, some income from the military, your ability to take the next decade. Hopefully you don't have the bad debt that I did. I say 10 years. I think the average person can do that. In your situation, it's probably going to be a bit less. Thanks, Matt, for doing that.
Of course.
Ninja Vanish, howdy. Do you try to get all your mortgage payments due dates on a specific day of the month, like the 5th or 7th or something? Matt? Do you even yours are paid?
Yeah. Literally, I think I have a mortgage that comes out almost every day of the month. When it's commercial, it's literally based on 30 days after your closing. So whatever day you close, that's what it's based on. When you do residential, you might be able to get it moved or assigned or, whatever. But no, I don't play with any of the dates. They are what they are. Some banks will move them. Some banks won't.
All of mine are the first week, generally between the 1st and 4th, depending on the mortgage company. I think they're all due on the 1st, but they're all on auto pay. And so sometime randomly in the first week, a mortgage goes out. I've never really thought about that. Two things that I do stagger is when my portfolio was really small, I staggered when my leases ended so that I wouldn't have my entire portfolio turning over at the same time. So I would want, if I was signing 2 tenants in a duplex at the same time, this one would have a 6-month lease, this one would have a 12-month lease, or vice versa, so that there was a gap between. As the portfolio got above 6 or 7 units, I stopped caring. I had enough cash flow to handle a couple of turnovers at the same time. So I stagger that. And later I switched it to the majority, if not all of my leases end in the middle of winter. And this is the thing that makes me a pariah. Some people don't like it. They want their leases in the summer because it's easier to find a tenant. And they say, I don't want my leases ending in the winter because it's really hard to find somebody who wants to move in the winter. Matt, you live in Siberia, right? You're in the area where it's just, you can die if you get locked outside of your house at a certain time of year. So they don't want to move in the winter. Well, I'm in Washington. It's uncomfortable to move in the winter. It's not a debilitating, it doesn't stop you in your tracks. Right. So I want all my leases to end in the winter because people don't want to move. So because of that, I've had 4 tenant turnovers in over a decade. Like it's one of the, I buy properties that contribute to it. I use the binder strategy, which keeps my tenants happy. I actually fix things, which keeps the tenants happy, and my leases end in the winter. They don't want to move. So there you go. Andy Borsch, this is a little role playing. Would it be possible for Dion and Matt to role play where Dion is the landlord and Matt is a problematic? They want you to be a jerk. Can you take a stretch for us, Matt? Okay.
We'll see how creative I can be.
How would I deal with a problematic tenant? So if you don't have good people skills, you should have a property manager, right? If you're too soft and too big-hearted, you should have a property manager. Take the money out. That's the fact that the property manager is probably going to make more money than the landlord does. Take that out. If you have those two things, no people skills, like if you're a neurodivergent, Asperger, borderline, whatever it is, or too soft-hearted, put a filter between you and the tenants. So Matt, you're a problematic tenant. So I'm sure you can tear me apart with your creativity. Let's see. What would be a problematic tenant complaint that I would have to deal with as a landlord? I've had a few.
Yeah, true. I have rats. Fix it.
Well, at least the rats killed all the mice. And no pets, rents late. Right? That's the meme on Facebook. I've seen that meme 1,000 times. So if you have rats and I fix it, sure, I'll be by in 48 hours to do an inspection. Okay. If there's any food left out, or if there's anything that's not clean, I'm going to have a rat, the Riddick's Terminate, guys come out and treat it, and you will pay it. If the rats are there because you don't keep the place clean. If it is clean and there's a rat problem, because if you're next to a field or whatever, yeah, I've got to put the poison down. That's something I do almost every year. I have no problem with doing that. But anytime I'm going to send out a service call, I just did this the other day. Did I tell you about that? I did. I sent you a picture of the screenshot. I was at literally a ball game at Cheney Stadium here. I will go and I watch the minor leagues. Tenant calls, my water won't shut off. Very nice tenant though. Not a problematic tenant.
Yes. No
problem. Luckily it's outside. It's not inside. So I have my emergency 24-hour numbers. I call my handyman, but it's in the evening. I don't get a response really quick. So I call my brother who lives close. So he goes by, I'm going to go by. My brother's going to go shut off the water. Because she's left-handed, she did the lefty-loosey, righty-tighty wrong, and had a service call. The emergency service coming out would have had a probably $300 emergency call to turn off her faucet. I probably wouldn't have hit that tenant with the fee. I would have covered it. But a problematic tenant would have got the bill. Okay, so you had rats. Absolutely. So you speak clearly and you say, here's, the tenant has an expectation. You're going to fix things, you're going to clean things, you're going to make things safe, you're going to take care of infestations. The landlord has an expectation. If it's a problem the tenant caused, it's a tenant expense. Same thing with a plumbing. I have the addendum in the lease. If there's a clog and they come out, if the roots grow into the pipe, I pay to fix it. If they find a stuffed animal in the pipes because your kid did that, you're going to pay to fix it. Same thing with the rats.
48 hours doesn't work for me. I want it tomorrow.
So that would be, I'd be out there in an hour if you'd like, if time is a factor, especially if I want the place to be clean. Giving them 48 hours to clean it was being nice. Second, the reason I was going to point out to Andy that I gave 48 hours is that's the state's minimum that the tenant can't say no. I can literally kick the freaking door in. I could drill the door and come in if I wanted to in 48 hours. Shorter than 48 hours, if I'm giving the notice, I can't if the tenant doesn't want me to. But the tenant can say, hey, there's a leak. Can you come now? Or the screen's broken and it's hot and I can't open the window. Can you come now? This is a law enforcement sentence that you use all the time. Consent is golden, right? If you get permission, you can do anything you want pretty much. But if my response was, I gave the 48 hours to give them time to get the place clean. So I'd probably be the one to pay for rats. But now they know that if there's an issue, I'm going to stick to the lease and go, if you cause this problem, it's going to be your expense. I don't care that I pay for this rat treatment this time. It's, I want to educate the tenant. And the 48 hours was to be legal so that the tenant couldn't say no. But if they came back as a problematic tenant and said, hey, it doesn't work, I want it out sooner works great for me.
And what time is that going to be?
You
I'm just giving you a real life example. I want to do this
because here's the problem too. The tenant will say, problematic tenant will say 1 o'clock, and then you send your guy and they're not there. And I will say, I can make it work for your schedule. You tell me a time, and since I have coded locks on every door, my repair guy is going to just come in. You don't even need to be there. If you want to be there, you're welcome to, but you don't.
Yeah,
have to.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with somebody there without me. So yeah, if you could give me that time, that would be great.
So you're going to tell me the time that works for your schedule.
Yeah. So I think, I'm looking at it now and it doesn't look like tomorrow I'm really available.
That is how it's going to do it too.
Just, we're playing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what do you think? So today's Tuesday. How about Friday? Does Friday work for you?
So I said 48 hours. You said sooner. I'm giving you 48 hours. They'll be there in 48 hours. It's in the lease. It's on page 3. It's the state minimum required. That's when my repairman will be there. Yep.
All right. I'm going to send you a text that makes me feel uncomfortable. And so that's how I'd like to, I just need you to fix the problem, but I'm going to send you a text.
I would recommend sending that via email because texts aren't admissible in court. We're going to end up in court. So you should send it through email.
Sure. I'll happily.
You have to have the backbone with your tenants and let them know that court is totally acceptable to you.
You're doing great, by the way.
One of the reasons tenants pick people like Matt and me to rent from is because we're not a property management company. Can you imagine a tenant saying any of this to a property management company? It would be some, no offense, secretary, right?
Yes.
Some guy or girl sitting in an office that has a lease in front of them and a phone number and a logic tree of what they can and can't say. That's going to say, here's your complaint issue. This is when it will be responded to. If you're not there, you don't allow access. Here's the fee that you're going to pay. They would just spell it out. As a self-manager, you have to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Be as nice as you can. Roadhouse rules, right? Always be nice. Mm-hmm. Until it's time to not be nice. But always be nice, but always be as, what do you call it? I don't want to say equal, fair, but firm.
Yes. But yeah, so, I mean, to give you a little bit of an idea. So I will have this exact exchange carried all the way through to the end on my channel because it literally will take 45 minutes. It was very painful, but I own her.
So I'm trying to think if I've never really had that problematic tenant because I set the tone early with anytime a tenant asks if the rent's going to be late, like the easiest way to tell them is absolutely, you can pay it late. This is what the late fee is. That sucks. I explained the chronology of time, right? The time of money. But then I also say the day that it's late, as a favor, I'm going to give you eviction papers. Explain that to him too, letting him know there is a system out there to protect them.
So she's a housing tenant that already paid the rent. She decided to call housing on me even after I told her I was getting her somebody there.
And this was why you kind of want to stop working with that housing authority. I think this is the one where they cited all of you problems, but none of her problems.
Yep. That was the final straw.
Powell, howdy. Hi, everyone. Question from Matt. How to deal with suspicion of dirty tenants, exterior front porch area, and front door is very dirty. Black handprints everywhere, etc.
I mean, they could just have kids, I mean, that certainly is part of it. But I think that, one of the things that I will typically do is I have something in my lease that allows me to, with notice, just go do a safety inspection, pressing the button on the smoke detectors and stuff. So if that's a problem, I have something like that in my lease. That would be what I would encourage you to exercise. I exercise that. And that's what then gets me in, because I still need to do my safety checkup, and that safety check is at my discretion. So long as I give them notice. So that's how I would manage that. And that's probably your cleanest way of doing that.
For me, I only worry about cleanliness, one, if it causes infestation, roach, rat, whatever, or if it affects other tenants. I did a live stream with Zuber this morning, and I talked about one tenant that I know, the 3 interior doors, I have holes punched through them all over, and they're just covered with tape. Mm-hmm. And I've told the tenant, look, I can replace them. It's going to come out of your deposit, or you're going to pay for it. And she said, no, don't replace them until I move out, because my kids will just break them again. I don't care what the state of the interior of the building is, or how clean the front door is. The porch thing, if the city finds you, or if you make the mistake of buying in an HOA and they fine you, yeah, I would make sure that the lease, covers that. Areas of responsibility. I'm wondering if I've ever had a cleanliness issue with tenants too, and how I've handled that. I have had tenants where I've had to say, the city says that car can't be there doing this, whatever. It's got to be registered. It's got to have tires if it's going to touch the street, but that's about it. Cool Reader 5. Duplex I live in is now paid off. Family and I occupy both sides. So I contact lenders next, or should I talk to a real estate agent about a property I'm interested in before I look into loans?
Make sure you have a lease for your next door neighbor, even if they're family. You need to have a legal document. You need to have a lease, and don't fluff it. If they're paying 18, don't make it 21, because that's fraud. And so make sure that the lease accurately reflects what they're paying. But you need to have something like that in place if you want to get a bank interested.
And the order of operations on who you talk to is generally, almost always, lender first.
Yes.
Some agents don't want to talk to you until you know what you can borrow.
Correct.
So yeah, lender, then agent. Beth Traverso, howdy, happy 4th. BF, howdy, happy 4th. Ko has a question for Matt that I will close in the house. Okay, that was the one that came from the super chat. Lars, howdy, does the amount of money that we borrow on a home equity line of credit affect our credit utilization, part of our credit score? Not yet. Yeah, the amount of money that you borrow can, yeah. I asked because I'm buying a second rental and will use it for down payment and finish paying off credit cards. So it can impact your credit utilization depending on how much of the HELOC that you use. When you take out a home equity line of credit without taking any money out of it, it impacts your debt to income ratio by 1% of the amount you could take out. So if you could borrow $100,000, they would say in your debt to income ratio, you have an added $1,000 a month ghost payment, but it does hit your debt to income ratio. So it does impact you. And Matt, you had the situation where you had, I'm going to get the numbers all wrong, but let me try.
Sure.
$75,000 line of credit.
Yep.
You used $25,000. So you were 50, at about a third of the credit utilization. They canceled the loan.
Yep.
Which means you didn't have to pay back what you borrowed, but you couldn't borrow anymore. And that moved you to a 100% credit utilization on that loan product.
Correct. That's what you got to be scared of in these markets. And you're also, I saw that you're paying off credit cards. You're also collateralizing your debt. Credit card has no collateral attached to it. Your house is collateral to that debt. That's why you're going to get less expensive debt on a HELOC than you will on a credit card.
Right. You're taking unsecured debt and backing it with an asset, which kind of can be a mistake, but 25% interest on a credit card versus 6% interest or 7% interest on a HELOC. There's a lot of things to put in the scale there to figure out what makes the most sense. BF, what is the minimum return on investment for your purchase a property in today's market? Now, today's market is good. The only thing we're going to change is in today's local market. What Matt would get as a return, Millennial Mike, Zuber, me, we're all getting different returns in our different markets. So what is your current area average and what do you shoot for?
Area average is probably between it's ranging between like 9 and 12. It's ranging between 9 and 12. I would say for me, it's still got to be over 20. I walked away from a deal that was 16 because there's only so much money in the bottom of the bucket to buy it, to buy.
Right. From
So when
the
you
idea
can't,
is to take, go ahead.
so when you can't do seller financing, when you got to buy it conventional, when you got to put 25% down, and when that's all said and done. So yes, seller financing's gold. Yeah, I know it is. No shit. It's great when you can get a seller financing deal with no money down and overpay for the asset and have it purely based on tanking your monthlies. I get it. However, if you're doing this in a sound fashion and you're doing a typical conventional or conforming loan where you're going to be 20 or 25% down and the return on that capital is about 16, but I can do other things or I did buy another deal that was a 20% return on capital. But yeah, I walked some of mine are value add. And so when it's all said and done, they're not going to be 20, they're going to be much more. But yeah, if you can't get seller financing, then yes, my preference is still I still wouldn't do a deal if it was less than 20.
So the idea is to take 60 to 90 days to learn the area average in your area. And the math is real, it's fuzzy math. This is not like an exact science. Here's how it worked in my market. I looked at 100 properties. And if anybody's in the BiggerPockets bootcamp, this is kind of something I talked about in the last office hours. I looked at, because I'm the teaching assistant for that, I looked at 100 properties, 80 would lose money. So I take them off the table. I'm not even going to look at those. Those are sellers that are expecting too much in a market where it's not justified. People are going to purchase that all cash to hide funds, deploy funds, protect funds from a foreign country, or redeploy 1031 funds. Like, it's not math that makes sense for an investor who's deploying their own capital. Out of the 20 that probably would make money, you get an area average and then you try to beat it. And for a long time, the three amigos, Lumberjack, Zuber, and me would say, you want to beat the average to get a great deal. And Matt, you pointed out, really what beating the average does is protects you from getting a bad deal.
Right.
So for years in my area, I could find 6s, 7s, and 8s. I shot for 10s. Last couple of years, I started only finding 4s or 5s, and I was thinking of adjusting to an 8. Instead, what I did is I expanded my market. Well, first I took a month and a half, went to Portugal to see if I wanted to buy there. I ended up not buying in Portugal, came back. Now I got aggressive at buying here. If I couldn't find what I was going to buy here, I was going to use Millennial Mike strategy, invest out of state in Gary, Indiana. But I expanded my market out 30 minutes and I tracked days on market, and I started making ridiculous offers on properties that had been on longer than 30 days. I found a couple that had been on over 100 days. And I made so it was started at 500. They made an adjustment to 477. I offered 4. They countered at 444. I offered 4. They countered at 422, and I offered 4. And then I pulled my offer and went to buy another place, and they came back and took my 4. So 20% off of their original list price by watching days on market and sticking to the number that made sense to me. Higher than 4. There were a couple of investors that said they would have paid 450 if they knew that they were going to come down that low. I don't know that I would have went that high. At 4, it makes sense to me. Killer deal, even with spending somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to bring it up to rent ready. Because the duplex 5 houses up just went for $750, and it needs a lot, not as much work, but a lot of work too. So area comps versus area rents, it makes it sense a lot more than what I'm paying. Duchess says, it's amazing to me that areas where housing availability seems most critical, the housing authority seems clueless. Correlation, causation. Could be. There is a reason why when you go into the Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV, DOL, whatever it is, wherever you live, that they have signs on the walls that say it is a felony to threaten our employees. A lot of people want state jobs because it has a version of tenure, like a teacher that's at a school that can't be fired. If you're working for the state after a long enough period of time, it's really hard to get rid of them. There was a state tester, CDL tester, that attacked me, physically attacked me on our property, and it took 3 years to have any action done by the state, right? So there are people working in there that can be so bad at their job, the public is going to want to threaten them. So they have to put up the sign saying it's a felony. Housing authorities, in most places, it's a housing authority that works for the county. So you get government employees. Your odds of getting a good government employee are small, not nothing, but they're small. So correlation and causation, maybe. Rob, my start time interfered with your nap time. Is Matt going to start pest control business so he can keep doing Section 8? BF says it's easier to keep a house than it is to keep a woman. I think Jeff Bezos agrees with you. Austin, thanks so much for the education. I'll be here every week and continue education myself. In the meantime, happy 4th, fellas. Have a good evening. Thank you. Duchess says that doesn't work in Florida. Must have been something we were talking about.
Yeah. So said that about moving out in the winter. And so that's true. And the other thing too is like for me, I like to stack it in June and September. Those are June, August, September. That's where 80% of my leases expire. And it's because I know that I can keep guys busy that entire month and painting and turnovers and all of that sort of stuff. But all of my agent services are around that too. So when I do an ad, it's very likely I've actually done an ad on 1 unit and gotten 5 units rented from 1 unit's ad. And it wasn't bait and switch. It was, hey, thank you very much for applying. And here's a whole list. And then they all saw it. And then 17 people wanted it. And we're like, hey, listen, we picked somebody for this unit, but we have these other 4. Hey, we picked somebody for that unit, but we have these other 3. And then we just kept on going back to people and just saying, hey, we've got this many and blah, blah, blah. And we went through that process. It took about a week, but we got 5 units rented. And somebody was like, oh, that's bait and switch. No, it's not. I wasn't saying that this is what you can have and then gave them something else. I said to them, you lost. Somebody else was better than you and a better fit and could pay more money. And I have this that fits your criteria. Let me know if you'd like to see it.
John Williams asked if you've shared your 3 Seasons porch pick yet.
Is that the one about the rats, John? I don't know. I remember. Because
I don't know. Three Seasons porch pick seems like you have a porch you're going to take pictures on different times of the year.
Maybe.
I could be wrong. That's just my guess.
I think, well, the 3 season porch was where the rat issue was a problem. I think it might be that, but I'm not positive.
Michelle makes a really good point here. One that I like to, I'm trying to think if this is the way I would look at it. So on pests, if they are spotted within X number of days from move-in, landlord is responsible. After that, it's the tenants. That totally makes sense. The only adjustment I would make there possibly, Michelle, is if I have a fourplex that's next to a, what do you call it? There's a million old rusty cars in it. What's that called? Junkyard. Mm-hmm. It's behind a massive fence, right? There's a big fence and everything. But if there are pest problems in the fourplex that come from the junkyard, that's a me problem I'm going to take care of. I'm not going to make the tenants pay for that. And my other ones that aren't by anything like that, if they move in and I wouldn't know what the local law is, I would probably say within 3 months if they notice a pest problem. The only change is if a tenant moves in the winter, end of winter, and they start hitting the spring. Here in Washington, we have sugar ants. That is a tenant issue. They're either going to pop up every year, no matter what you do. You buy taro at Home Depot, you put it on the trails, it's gone. And that's always, it's cheap. The tenants handle that. Peter Navarro, what's up, guys? If you use a smart lock on your front door of your rental, do you provide batteries or is that their responsibility? Happy 4th. Matt?
If they let me know that it's blinking red, I just say, yeah, you need to go swap the batteries. For us, we will usually have hidden a 4-pack of batteries somewhere in the house or 4 batteries in the house.
So that's what I do. I have batteries in each unit for smoke detectors and for the locks, and it's in the lease. And I say I provide the first batteries. After this, it's your responsibility. I do use a smart lock. Well, it's not a smart lock though, because I don't like Wi-Fi locks. If I had midterm or short term and I had a constant rotation of tenants, I'd probably go that route. But the batteries don't last as long. I, for a while, was using slag locks, and I have one on a door where apparently we found it. The limit was 3 years, January 6th. Well, maybe like the 8th by the time we got that in. Until now, the battery finally died to swap that out. It was a test to see how long it would take. But it's in the lease that every year the tenants will switch out the batteries. I have provided the one that's in there when they move in and the one that's in the drawer for the smoke detectors and the locks the first time. Also, for a period of time, I was supplying fire extinguishers for units. And then I found out that you are then responsible if it fails. So now what I do from watching smart content is I have fire extinguishers that tenants can buy for $1.
Yeah.
But they purchased it.
So I just won a case against my insurance company on this. I had 4 buildings, larger buildings. They wanted me to go buy extinguishers for all of them. And my answer to them was absolutely not. And they said, we're going to cancel your policy. I said, then I will sue you. I said, because you are trying to put a liability on my shoulders that is not my liability. If I provide that extinguisher, it's my duty to test it. It's my duty to ensure that it works. And that is not a financial responsibility that I can take on. And I said, you are putting me at a financial disadvantage. And they came back and they actually said, all right, we'll strike that from your list of things that we're requesting. I was like, good call. So, yeah, because that would have cost me, even if I had, the notion was stupid. The underwriter was a moron. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not legal. They just want all the risk as much as they possibly can put taken off of them and away from me. I'm paying you for some of that risk. So you're going to take it, because at the end of the day, it still has smoke alarms. In fact, one of the buildings actually has a sprinkler system. Well, but it just makes sure that, if something were to malfunction with the sprinkler system. I said, not my problem. What do you got?
That's what my floors look like right now.
Oh, they're beautiful. Those will
Actually,
sand out.
I'm going to put tile in here.
No, they'll sand out beautifully.
I think I want to do tile. I want a tile room. Anyway,
That's fine.
Sorry. Bill O'Connell, howdy. Do you have a business card? If so, what do you call yourself? Property manager, owner, landlord? Matt, let's talk about your business cards.
I have a digital business card, but I don't give it to any of my tenants. So we set up a group text when our tenants move in, and it's myself, my wife, and whatever tenants are 18 and older in the house. We set up a group text. We put all their names on it. And that way, if there's ever an issue, that's how it's reported. Or that's how the conversation can be had. They can file anything in our portal, which is a product that we use. But they can file, get anything in there and put a maintenance request in, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but yeah, as far as business cards go, I use it when I'm creating network stuff. I use my digital business card that's actually branded.
So I don't have a business card, and I'm gonna use a very short example, as much short as I can, so we can get to the rest of these questions. Which I really appreciate the questions. The questions is where the content comes from, and I love live streams because you get top of mind thought process.
Yes.
If we make a video that we researched, that we looked up the data on, and we put it out there, we thought it was important. But if you ask us a question and we have an answer, we've had to consider it, we keep it top of mind. If you ask us a question and we're like, I don't know, I've never done that, I wouldn't worry about it. That's not something to focus on to do what we've done. But the question is here, do you have a card? No. What do you call yourself? Property manager, owner, or landlord? So I for a long time, I taught on military bases. I taught in prisons. I taught everywhere, helping people find jobs. I ran a nonprofit called TPS. I think the website's still up because I gave it away when I walked away from the CDL school, hiddenjobs.org. One of the things we did is we taught how to do resumes. And a lot of the times the veterans, they're being told, because this sounds smart, but this is a huge mistake that veterans are told when you get out of the military. So when a military person gets out of the military, it's an end of active service, end of duty, whatever you want to call it. Each branch does it something different. In the Marine Corps, it's setting the ball down because game over, you're out of here. But service members are being told to call themselves veterans, which sounds like you have a disability. They're being told even worse. This one word is making employers eliminate the resume. They see this word, takes you off the plate. Transitioning. If you're getting out of the military, every class that you go through, everything in TAPS, the Soldier for Life program is going to say you are now marketable to the civilians because you are a transitioning service member. Because to the military, that means I'm getting out. What does transitioning mean in the civilian world?
How to demonetize in 3, 2, 1.
Right. Insert every dad joke here on Caitlyn Jenner. But so I've had veterans go, well, if I don't call myself veteran because that sounds old or sounds like I have a TBI or sounds like I have PTSD or whatever, and I can't call myself transitioning, what do I call myself as a landlord, as a person who owns properties and has tenants? Here's what I call myself, and here's what veterans should call themselves when they get out of the military. Nothing.
Yeah.
Don't you if you're getting out of the military, you are a human being looking for a job. And here's my experience that matches the position. Nothing about your past, nothing about you, nothing about transitioning. When I'm interacting with the tenants, I've never called myself the landlord. I've just said, I own the property. I don't say property manager because that implies that it is a property management business. I'm just the person who owns it. I don't call myself anything else. I'm Dion. Here's how you pay the rent. Here's my introduction letter. We're good to go. So if you call yourself something, imagine the negative connotations that come with the term landlord. There are realtors out there that scream fits when you call a bedroom a master bedroom because the terminology isn't PC enough for however woke people want to be. So whatever term you use could be offensive to the tenants, so don't use one. If the tenant asks for something that I don't want to provide, I will say that I have partners that I'm going to check with. So I'm not the bad guy saying, no, you can't, I won't rip out all of your windows and put in side-to-side sliders downstairs. You have them everywhere in these other rooms, this one area that you want. I'm not going to spend the money on windows when you have them everywhere else. But I can say, let me check with my partners. They don't need to know that my partners are my kids' cats, right? So I'm kind of vague on that. But so yeah, no business card. Don't call myself anything. If somebody asks, I do say I own the place, right? REI Stoners, howdy, working double time and a half today. Nice.
When someone says to me, and they comment about my use of the word master bedroom, just like, so we all know that clearly the dungeon hasn't worked out very well for you. Like, I just get rude. Like, shut up. It's a master bedroom. Oh no, it's a primary. No, I'm primarily annoyed with your stupidity and your statement. I don't care. It's a master bedroom. That's what 90% of America identifies it as. Stop.
Agreed. Right.
Stop.
This is where I get to check. I get to choose my pronouns, right? But I'm going to call them adjectives. Call me tall, handsome, and rich, or I get to sue you. Sean, howdy, Sean. What are your thoughts on have rent due on the 28th of the prior month instead of on the 1st of the month? So I see you shake your head. I agree. Here's the concern, Sean. If somebody wants the rent due on the 28th, it seems like you want the rent to come in before the mortgage goes out, which is not how to run a real estate business. If you are ever waiting for rent to come in to make a mortgage, your margins are so thin, you should keep mine and Matt's contact info so we can buy your properties when you fall on your face, right? If there's that person doing that. So I'm not saying that's what you're doing, Sean. I'm saying that's what we would think of somebody who did that. You want a big enough buffer in that account to where you can miss months of rent and not worry about when it comes in. I have seen people with small portfolios where they have some rent comes in on the 1st, some comes in on the 15th. I have a tenant whose lease is where the rent is due on the 8th because they get paid some annuity that comes out once a month on like the 5th or 6th or something. So it's make sure that it has time to go into the account and then their time starts. So you can start it on different days of the month. My friend Dan, who retired last August, 42 days after me, not that anybody's counting, has his split basically half on the 1st, half on the 15th of his entire portfolio. For some reason it made sense to him. So yeah, it is an option.
You will end up in legal trouble if you require it the month prior.
Right. Well, if you require it the 30
For
days,
the next
28th
month
to 28th
before,
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Dan,
can't do that.
howdy. Not the Dan that I know, but hello, Dan. Howdy. Would you ever recommend a 15-year mortgage over a 30? So I'll let you go, Matt. I have 2 examples, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's more of like a swan thing, right? Sleep well at night. If a 15 makes you sleep well at night, if you're want a different time horizon, I always like the 30 because I can always make the 30 and 18 with an extra couple, two or 2.5 payments, or going with paying every 2 weeks. Like, you can do all of that sort of stuff. The key that we're really looking for, if you're looking to buy and expand, the key that you're really looking for is flexibility. That's what most people are looking for in that regard. They're looking for flexibility. And you'll find that the market is often buying the assets in your market based on 30-year amortized loan. So when you're doing it at 15, you're likely going to be upside down on that 15 if you get a 15. If you find one that works with the numbers on a 15, it's a killer on a 30, I'm sure. as far as return on capital.
So my two thoughts is, first, I would never recommend it for somebody who's trying to retire early and is in the growth phase. I would prefer 1,000-year mortgages. I want the lowest payment, the highest income, the biggest gap, the best cash flow. So I agree with what you just said. Some people that sleep well at night, you want to get it paid off sooner. You can do the pay every other week instead of once a month. You can add extra payments. You can have that control. You could get a little better interest rate with 15 but 30, but your monthly payments are higher. I don't ever really care or want properties paid off. That doesn't matter to me that much. So I'm not looking at 15. So that my first example is no, I want 1,000-year mortgages. Japan has 100-year mortgages. I'm a little jealous. So right now there are some companies that are starting to look at 30 or 40. We talked about Convoy Home Loans has a 40-year DSCR loan product that goes up to 8 units. I was considering that. So the longer the better for me. Here's when the 15 makes sense. And I'll use the example from Brandon Turner from BiggerPockets, right? Actually, I just watched an episode of him as like a guest host again back on with David Green. His daughter was born, Rose, and he purchased a fourplex in Aberdeen. So it's 4 single-family houses, it's a fourplex on a 15-year note. His goal wasn't to buy cash flow, wasn't to buy the asset. It was to give his daughter an education start. So he put it on a 15-year note so that when she turns 15, this property's paid off. So for those 15 years, it has cash flowed. This was at a point in time when even with a 15-year mortgage, he can cash flow. Fixed up the 4 properties. I believe from at this point, he's probably sold them, whatever he's doing with this stuff now, but this was the original plan. At 15 years, it's now paid off. It's his asset. It's cash flow the whole time. It's going to remain his asset, but he will do a cash out refinance, put another mortgage on there, still continue to cash flow, take the cash out refinance, that is his daughter's, start a business, go to college, buy investment properties, whatever it was. So there was a timeline of a child being born, turning 18-ish, to have a lump sum of money come from the property. That's not the best way to grow real estate, but it is a really cool thing to do with one of your kids. I would never do it because my kids would kill me for a slice of pizza, and I never want to be worth more dead than I am alive, so they're not in the which they actually are. Duchess, Sean, I offer a small discount if tenant pays before the first. Has worked like a charm if one of my renters paid up front a week on a regular basis before. I like that. You're not requiring it, so less legal trouble. It's kind of like when I hire a contractor. I go, here's your estimate. I agree to it. This is the amount of the tip if it's done by this day. Every day after that, the tip goes like this until there's nothing.
Yeah, my only concern there is that this is a margin game. It is a margin game,
right?
And depending on what that is, if it's hey, I'll take $25 off your $1,000 rent. Well, by the end of the year, that's $300, and it's like that's a lot of money in a deal that might be making you 5%. So that's the only reason I don't like. If you can't get it together and get your rent paid in a reasonable time, pound sand, you don't get to stay. Like you got, and even with my units, like 137 units right now, I have 3 people that are late on rent.
Lars says, I'm using the cash to pay off the credit cards and borrowing on the HELOC as a down payment and to save reserves. So if you're doing the HELOC and you're going to buy the next property, the first thing with the HELOC is, can you pay it off before the rate adjusts? And if it's locked in for 10 years, great. Can you pay it off within 10 years? Because then when the rate adjusts, it might be 20%. There's no guarantee on what's going to happen in the future. It could be 2%, but it could be 20. So I would want to only use a HELOC if I can pay it off before the rate adjusts. And second, do you have a deal that's good enough to justify whatever debt is on the property you're purchasing and to cover the HELOC? Followed up by Sean has another question. Also, thoughts on doing a 2 to 3 year lease instead of a 1-year lease? Matt, thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. Just check what your state and local laws are. If you need to have a 2-year lease notarized, I don't like a 3. A 3 is just way too long if it's not commercial, or if you're not able to build in there some sort of a rental increase. The other challenge that you're also going to have is that what happens if rents for some reason in your area go up 30%? You're a little bit screwed. And you're not going to want to leave all that money on the table. So I think, Dion raises rents every couple of years. I'm usually the same. Like I'm not trying to get them every single year. The only, believe it or not, the only ones that I raise every year is Section 8, because that rate changes every year and they're so behind the market. And so that one I have to, it's because that's rent controlled. Rent control means I have to raise the rent every year. Market means I don't.
So I prefer 2-year leases. I don't want to go longer for the same thing. We can have a massive rent, a correction. So 2 years is it. I am in a state where over 12 months needs to be notarized, tenant signature, not owners. So make sure you're aware of that if that's going to be what happens. I'm about half and half. Half my tenants are year lease, half are 2-year leases. I during the binder strategy, I just kind of casually mentioned at the end, if we had a 2-year lease, I couldn't do this again next year. And half the time the tenants go, we could do a 2-year lease. That locks them in, gets them in there.
Yep.
Sometimes you'll have a tenant that doesn't want to do a 1-year lease. Let's say you want a 2-year. If you're lazy like me, it means less time to turnover, less time to think of leases. 1-year lease is probably the most common, but you'll have tenants that don't want to do, they want to go month to month. If you want to qualify for those conventional loans in your name, those first 10, a lot of lenders are going to want to see at least 3 months remaining. And this is, I think RES Stoner's got a question coming up here on the leases, so we'll cover that when we get there. But how do you show 3 months remaining on a month-to-month lease? So it's kind of penalizes the owner for their next loan if you do that. So I've had situations that last year I had a gentleman that was trying to buy a house. So I pair him up with an agent. I pair him up with a lender. I'm walking them through. Here's how you get on the property ladder. I'm trying to help the tenant out. I tell all my tenants, here's my YouTube channel. Here's how I do this. Let me teach you how to do this. You don't need to rent. You can own something like this. You can retire in 10 years. One guy finally, first tenant ever to go, oh, how do I do this? Buy a house. But I needed a year lease. But he's hunting for a property. So what do? We signed a 1-year lease with a $50 lease termination fee. So that when I go to the next loan, if I wanted to buy a property in that timeline, I can show my underwriters for the mortgage company, I have longer than 3 months remaining on not just the majority, but every single one of my leases. I've never had an underwriter come back and go, yeah, well, we don't like the termination fee only being $50. The tenant can get out when he found a house and got out of the lease. I don't even know if I hit him with the $15 fee. I was trying to help him get out of the house the whole time. And I just told him, because no, he got his full deposit and everything. Spotlessly left the property though. That was nice. But I was able to satisfy what lenders would want. BF, I haven't seen a deal with an ROI of 9 to 20% in decades. Most ROI I've bought in the past 3 have been 4 to 7. Can't find a positive ROI in Nevada or South Florida. Prices are way too high. Dion, location. Hope you don't own a residential property backed up to a junkyard. It is a 4-unit residential backed. It's not a junkyard. It's a car junkyard.
Salvage yard.
Salvage yard. But again, there's a massive privacy fence, and then on my side of the property, it's Washington. There's tree. You can't see it. I just know it's close enough to where if there's a rodent issue, I'm going to take care of it. Yeah, you can't see any of the cars. But BF, what asset class are you looking at? And if you're saying 4 to 7, you can't find positives. I've never seen a single family house that would cash flow in Washington. I just haven't seen it in the markets that I'm like, maybe far enough out. There could be some. Prices are too high on single family, rents or not, but on small multifamily they are. So house with ADU they are, and right now I'm not seeing them unless I look at days on market, and they make those ridiculously low, far under list price offers.
Yes.
The wealth building journey. Happy 4th of July. I think we're supposed to have reach out to me, wealth building journey on that. This is me, you, and Millennial Mike have the hour. I think. Yes. My memory probably kicked in. I think we've arranged it for sometime this week. So
okay.
I hope I haven't missed it already. I hate but let's make that work.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Duchess, BF, yeah, good luck in South Florida. Crazy valuations and insane insurance rates. Insurance can be a killer in Florida. Cape Coral, all north of Cape Coral, they're literally doubling the size of the town. So there might be some opportunity to look there, but know the age of the building and how high it is, because flood insurance can go thousands of dollars in the spread of what you might get.
Yeah.
Richard, howdy. On smoke detectors and carbon monoxide, do either of you have a preference as far as being combination or separate, or don't matter? I think all mine are combination.
Yeah. So I actually, if you do the ones that communicate with each other, not hardwired. And so what's really interesting is that I believe it's Kidda. They have a carbon monoxide, and then they have a smoke, and then they have a combi. What's really interesting is that the carbon monoxides and the smokes don't communicate with each other. And so I actually just outfit the places for the few extra bucks. I outfit them. If they're not hardwired, I actually will use, because the hardwire is what changes everything. One of the towns that I do business in, they actually allow for them to communicate via Wi-Fi. And so they don't have to be they have to be hardwired, but they don't have to be hardwired interconnected. And so I'll actually use the combis in that case because it drastically reduces my cost for wiring. It's this Thursday at 7 p.m. Dion. Eastern time.
Can you write that down, Matt? No, I'm sure it's, is it 7? Because Eastern, that's going to be what, 10 o'clock for you?
No,
I mean,
7 p.m.
like
Eastern
3 in the
time is
morning
7
anyways,
p.m.
right?
Eastern time for me. I just need to know if it's 4. So I'm fine with either. I can do 10 o'clock. I can do 10 p.m. on Thursday night.
All right.
If it's 7 West.
Thank you,
I
Chester,
think that,
for
but I think that he's East Coast. So,
yeah, so let's verify that. I think that's right. And because I think Mike said he's off Thursday. I think Mike is actually coming here Thursday for us to break into the basement and do that video.
so if it's 4 your time and 7 my time, it's fine. If it's 7 your time and 10 my time, because it's you, it's fine.
I'm fine with it because it's Chester.
Exactly.
John, Texas. How do you decide what floors to install in your new place? So I so far, every rental I put in LVP. I prefer LVP that doesn't look like planks. So I go usually 24 by whatever. It's the huge tiles. I like the big tiles. That I don't like the faux marble look, but I like the big tile that's a solid color look. In my rental unit here, I'm doing LVP in every room. In the unit that I'm in, I'm thinking with its location to the town, its water view, I'm going to be here 5 to 10 years at least. So not quite the forever home. I don't know what that's going to look like. So I'm probably going to, in the 2 rooms that need flooring, 3 bathrooms getting full tile, everything tearing out, tub, putting in walk-in shower. I don't know, as a grown guy, when's the last time you took a bath, right? I mean, unless you get injured. So I'm putting in walk-in shower and then I'm tiling these rooms. Yeah, so that's the current plan. Kevin, howdy. What are your thoughts on calling on-market seller agents and allowing them to represent you as the buyer as a way to incentivize them to accept your offer? Matt? I think Mike does this.
Yeah, it's a two-edged sword. You know, they could be a great broker that moves a lot of product and you can trust them. They could be a very new broker or newer broker that doesn't move a lot of volume and they're not very good. It is a two-edged sword. So I've done it with my brokers that I know that I trust. I've let them represent both sides. A broker that I don't know well, I'm not interested.
So to express what my opinion is, the current property that I purchased, I expanded my market and started looking for long days on market. I found the property. I reached out to my agent and said, I want to make an offer on this property. I did not reach out to the selling agent and incentivize them to take mine because I was going so long on market. I want my agents that I've worked with to make a commission to want to bring me the next deal. So he made a commission on a property I brought to him. I had the choice and that's the way I went. So I've thought it through, same thing. I want somebody that's going to represent me with the agent paperwork done right, the inspection period done right, everything in my favor where they represent me. Not saying that the seller agent might have not had my best interest at heart, but they do work for the seller.
Yeah. It's 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific time, Thursday.
Awesome. I'm gonna rely on
4 p.m. your time.
you.
It's on your channel, Dion. I'll send you a text.
Oh, there you go. Chester, send me a message. REI stoners, if I inherited a tenant that's month to month, when I take over, can I stay on the old lease or do I immediately have to have them on a month to month contract with me? Whenever I've acquired tenants, properties with tenants in them that are on month to month leases, they are on that existing lease because the lease is between tenant and property. You don't have to immediately go out and do a new lease. You do want to do an introduction letter that says how you collect rents, how to contact you for issues. And I like that you want to keep them on month to month for a couple of months. If you've taken the free binder course, you know that you don't want to do the binder for at least 60 days so that you can have 2 full month cycles go through to know if you want to keep these tenants, then do the binder method.
Yeah.
BF. I once sold a property to a guy who was 85 years old. He took a 30-year mortgage and he was laughing, saying he will never live to pay for the house.
True.
Yep. But the note exists to that seller.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Andy Borsch, would you offer month to month, 3, 6, and 12-month lease options in which the shorter the time, the higher the rent? I haven't done that option. I've seen a lot of people talk about the tenant demands going on month to month. That was where I just said, hey, let's do a year-long lease with a super low rent termination fee. I prefer long leases and not thinking about it. I don't know, at least 8 years since I've had a lease shorter than 12 months. And I think that was just one tenant that said, what was the reason? They renewed the lease anyway, so it didn't matter. There was a reason why they wanted a shorter lease. REI Stoners, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that and being a member of But Not Today. Where's the best place to shop butcher block? Matt, that is a question for you.
So 2 places I would check is LL, which used to be Lumber Liquidators. I would check there, and I would also check Home Depot. I would look at both of those spots, and I would be looking at make sure it's not any pine, which it's usually not. Poplar is the hardest, but it usually has like a greenish hue to it. So I like oak, I like red oak. All of those look really good when you pour epoxy on them. And you're usually, for an 8-footer, you're $220 bucks for an 8-footer, maybe $240 for an 8-footer. So yeah, those are the 2 best places that I found with consistency. However, you're Pacific Northwest. I'd be looking at a local lumber mill. I would be looking at a local lumber mill, because I'm sure there's companies around there that manufacture that stuff, because you can make the little tiny slats that they then, glue them together and press them together. I would look at a local lumber mill. I would talk to a couple of local lumber places. Don't get crazy and don't overpay, because it is something that can be mass produced. But if you can get something local, that could be a relationship worth having, because then maybe they have stuff with blemish, and a blemish isn't going to matter if you epoxy it. It just isn't. So if they have like blemish stuff for half price, that would work out really well for you.
BF says, I've been installing waterproof laminate flooring in main living areas, bedrooms, and tile in the bathrooms in all my rentals. I'm trying to think. I have 2 places with tile now. The rest are all LVP. I do LVP everywhere except for stairs. Stairs, I put carpet.
8-pound pad, carpet, and 8-pound pad. And then you make sure that when you're talking to your carpet guy, tell him I want you to section it. And the reason that you want him to section it is because he can literally remove 2 or 3 stairs that get a stain on them and resection and re-put in pieces because it wasn't tied to the rest. And then the other thing that I wanted to say about BF2 is tile is a geographical desirability in Florida and Las Vegas specifically. Up here in the Northeast, tile is extremely expensive. You're looking at $20 a square foot to install tile where I live. And so when you pick tile,
the material is super cheap.
The material is like we use nice tile, and that's about $5 a square foot. But between Hardy Backer, mortar, more importantly, all the labor, it is extremely expensive. I mean, it is literally, I know that looking at some of the quotes that I saw for some stuff I was looking at in Vegas, it was like $5, $4 or $5 a foot for tile install. Here it's like 12, 10, 12, 14.
I think I'm getting quoted 7.
Yeah.
But that's full, all square footage, including putting in the shower and all of that. All
now, is that putting in the Hardy Backer too?
It's the Hardy Backer, the tile, and not parts. I'm buying all the parts, right? So
right.
Be on there, but 7 a square foot for all the labor and the plumbing and all of that to be done. So yeah, and then so I like the sectioning on stairs because I have had a couple of sections where you get a cat that tears up a little part of a section or whatever. They're just doing 2 stairs. It's already sectioned off.
Yep.
I have a great carpet guy. This guy, he looks like Mr. Burns from Simpsons. Stooped shoulders, just looks 80 something.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he is.
Yeah.
He's done LVP for me, and he'll reach down and grab one of those LVP boxes, throw it up on his shoulder, and all of a sudden he's straight like a marching Marine with his chest out, just up into the next one. I don't know how he does it, but I have him do my carpet too.
Nice.
BF compliments our shows. Thank you. He says you are full of knowledge, and I think it's awesome that you're sharing it too.
You as well.
Andy Borsch, would you howdy again, Andy? Would you use Hemline app if you're just starting with one unit? No, and I'll explain why. It's a house hack. If not, when would it make sense to migrate to Hemline? So with one unit, I think there's enough to learn without learning any other platforms. You don't need Stessa, you don't need Rent Ready, you don't need apartments.com is a free thing. When you have 3 or 4 units and they're cash flowing, now you might look at something that has a little bit of a fee. If you're going to grow, as your portfolio gets huge, you're going to want one of the platforms that Matt uses because it has a better back end for taxes, which I would never use with my portfolio. I have a spreadsheet. But Matt, what's the one that you use?
I use Doorloop. We do a technology review every couple of years. We might be making a change. We like Doorloop, but we don't love it. We like it, but we don't love it. We expected to see some changes take place, but to Dion's point, spreadsheet, he does it all in a spreadsheet. I did it to 60 units in a spreadsheet. Don't recommend that, but
16 easily. Yeah.
16. Yeah. But I was at 60. What I have recognized is that I would have changed it earlier only because it would have helped drastically reduce the amount of time, because becomes a lot of management when you have 60 units and you're doing it all in a spreadsheet. It might even make you work 8 hours a week, 8 hours a month. Yeah.
No, I'd have to quit. So I would use Hemline if you're going to travel a lot, right? The idea is you could step up the tiers to the things that you need. The first tier, I use it right now. I think I'm up to 4 units on there now. I was 3. I was adding the 4th. So I'm slowly cycling tenants that I think that can handle the tech shift. I'm not putting all of the tenants on there. But when you start adding new tenants or having tenant turnover, they're going to automatically go to Hemline. So when I travel, I could step up to the tier where the handyman and maybe the Angie's List version of handyman can use the portal to get, assigned to do tasks. If I step up to the highest tier, if I have a tenant turnover and have to have somebody go sign the lease, I'll do that. But I like the lowest one. It's $28 a month plus $2 per unit that you put on there. So it starts off with $28. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that to me, I'm like Matt, I want to avoid every fee that I can, because $28 per month in a year is a significant amount. But the sleep well at night effect of I am going to Thailand after the cruise to the Mediterranean. So we're coming back to see Matt sometime in, I think, July, early August, end of July.
Yeah.
We're gonna be back there. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna come. I'm gonna take a cruise to the Mediterranean in September. When we get back, I'm taking 3 months going to Thailand. When I'm gone, I have everything in place to handle every issue that pops up. For me, it's worth being on a platform where I have that flexibility. I will leave it at the lowest tier, and it's really cool. When a tenant says, "Hey, I'm moving out," I can literally just log in, change Hemline that month to the tier that I need, and use the services that pop up then. If somebody else decides, Andy, don't get it yet, wait till you have 3 or 4 rentals and you have the cash flow to maybe start using a platform. It does make it easy when you start having tenant turnover, because it puts it on 30 platforms with you putting the information in only once. So I like it. I had a great experience with that last year. And squirrel, my memory kicks in. So don't do Hemline yet. If you use Hemline, use the code Dion Talk. You get 20% off your first year. So I am not going to Pattaya. I did one time BF, and I learned that that's a very unique part of Thailand. I'm a scuba diver, not a euphemism, an actual scuba diver. I go there for Koh Tao, Koh Phanong. I want to go to Phuket this time, and there's whale sharks to dive with. There's, Koh Tao was a prison. You get to go and dive where all the things it's just cool stuff to see there. So that's why I'm going to Thailand. And the weather. And it's not that the weather there is great. It's the weather here is terrible in the winter. It's always raining and wet and gray. Went to Pattaya the first time. Me and my brother went to Thailand. We flew to Chiang Mai, took an overnight train from Chiang Mai to Bangkok. We get off the thing in Bangkok. Now we're hours away from, there's 1,000 cities, not that many, but a lot of cities we could go to. Taxi cab comes up, guy to us, sees 2 guys standing there, goes, "You're going to Pattaya," which was our next destination. Didn't know anything about it. And then we got there. And if you are a single male looking for companionship, and remember, boys and girls, if they have an apple, they probably have a banana. Then Pattaya is a place you can check out. But if you're just wanting to go for scuba diving and you want to, I swam with elephants and played with tigers and zip lined and all of that, not the place I'm going. I see Stephan said, hey everyone, howdy Stephan. And then you threw in a super chat, which I appreciate very much. And it has a question here. Thanks for the live, guys. Looking at a house with a detached ADU that seems to be not permitted. Am I able to get a building inspector to see if it's conforming during inspection period? I don't know about a building inspector. That would depend on your municipality, their availability. But I think a home inspector, Matt, you might have to back me up on this because this isn't one I've dealt with, would be able to tell you if it would pass inspection or what would need to be done to make it pass inspection on some of the visible things.
So they can tell you the mechanically, yes. They can't tell you legally, yes. So that's the person that finds that mess out is the appraiser. And if it's not, then it will affect the appraisal and affect the value. So what you really want to do is you do want to, within your due diligence time, reach out to the town and say, I couldn't find any paperwork on this ADU that's on this property. It makes sure that it could be an ADU that's built. It could have a kitchen. They could say, we approved an ADU, but we didn't approve an ADU with a kitchen. We just expected it was an auxiliary dwelling unit, but it wasn't a livable unit. So that actually can be the devil in the details. Yes, push that town, but that will absolutely, obviously blow up a deal for sure.
So there's two things you're looking at when you're looking at something that's built that's not permitted. The first is the appraisal. If you have that built out space and it has a bathroom and it has a kitchen and it has bedrooms with egress and everything qualifies and it would totally rent out, the appraiser might not be able to count that as living space if it's not permitted. They might have to call it storage. My nephew is looking at 2 mobile homes on acreage. The first one is all legal, the second one is not. So technically it's a mobile home that is a storage shed as far as appraisal goes. So if it will appraise with that one house at the price you're offering, no big deal. That's the first thing is appraisal. Second, if you have tenants living in a place that's not permitted and they find out, some states, the actual repercussions are you have to remunerate the tenant for all of the rents that they have ever paid you.
Yep.
And your neighbors are jerks. They're going to report you. Kind of like I went into the city here. I'm pulling permits for the work that I'm doing, getting contractors, finding out, which agency, because I'm in a new county that I normally invest in, which agency does the permit for when I add a gas stove, which permits does I want to change out an electric box, which is L&I here. The siding, if it's under a certain square feet, you don't need a permit. Well, I have a dead tree to remove. They said, okay, that tree we can tell is dead from the photo, so there's no permit needed. But we need to write down the address because your neighbors are going to call.
Yeah.
So whenever you have work done that's visible, for some reason, there's a bunch of people who decide, I need to report to the city that this is happening so that they can go and make sure it's done legally because people suck. So be ready to do it legally. Be ready for the living space not to count during the appraisal, and then figure out what it's going to take to permit it. Sometimes it could be something as simple as the windows were put in without headers. Well, That's reframing half the wall, basically, and getting it permitted and inspected. It's worth it to do that on an ADU to make it legal.
Correct.
If a window is lower than 18 inches from the floor, the gap between floor and window, and it's lower than 18 inches, it has to be tempered glass. So was all of that done right? Will an inspector be able to tell you most of the stuff that should be permitted or would be questionable? They'll be able to point it out. But I agree, the appraiser is going to be the one to make the decision on if it's going to qualify. Because remember, the appraiser works for the lender. Even though you pay them, they work for the lender. Their job is to protect the lender, not you. Ninja Vanish, thank you very much. Just want to say thanks for answering questions. Much appreciated. We're probably going to be wrapping this up here in a little bit and let Matt go hang out with his family.
Yeah, you missed Andy's if not using Hemlane, what to use for tenant application screening, signing lease, etc. when starting them. For me, what I do, Andy, is I tell them I want them to basically take a snapshot of their Credit Karma. I want to see, that's how I get their credit score without having to pay for it. I want them to basically sign an affidavit attesting to the fact that they've had no evictions. Like when you were applying, you're saying, you click this box and you say, I've had no evictions. We literally just have a paper application I can send via email, or we actually have it in our property management software, but we used to send it via email. And when we had that, we got their credit score. We got them saying that they had never been evicted before. And then we got copies of their pay stubs. That's what they needed to do in order to see the apartment. And then we still get a good portion of people that then qualify to then see it. Then they see it. And then based on that, I make a selection. And then based on that selection, then I do a background check to make sure that the background check is clean and clear and as it should be. But I'm not doing the background check before they even see the place. I'm doing it only after I've met them. They've seen the place. They have decent credit. They have a job that makes 3X. They attest to no evictions, and then I'll find anything bad. And so I have had people that when they hit that point, that they then lost the apartment because I found out that they had been evicted. Oh, well, that was quite a while ago. Oh, well, I didn't say quite a while ago. I said ever. So ever is forever. So yeah.
So here's the chronology for me on what I used on tenants. First tenant, no lease, no background check, handshake, nightmare year, ended horribly. Then I went to cozy.co, which was a Canadian company where it was free for me, $38 fee for the tenants, gave me credit, background, and eviction. Background went away at one point to where it was just credit and eviction. Then Cozy was acquired by apartments.com. So for the last 5-6 years, I've used apartments.com, which was a free for me, $45 fee for tenants. Then last year I switched over to Hemlane, and there's a monthly fee, $28 plus $2 per unit on the lowest tier, which is what I use. And it's a fee for the applicant based on the platform that they find it on. So if they find it on Zillow, Apartments, Trulia, whatever source that Hemlane put it out on 30 platforms, they'll pay the fee. I don't know or see what that is. I'm not making any money on application fees, but I get the report on eviction status and credit, which is credit score and history. History to me is as important as score. I've never done the application process myself. I've never pulled somebody's credit. I've never pulled background or anything like that. So I've been through one of those platforms. I do in the beginning, when you only have probably 3 or 4 units or less, recommend apartments.com. It's free. Maybe I think Zillow even has a free option. I think they're charging now. Zillow has waffled back and forth. They charged for a while, then it went away. Now they're charging again. Apartments.com was free. Hemlane does have the fee, but that's how that went for me. Bill buys houses. I wonder what Bill does. Just tiled an 1,100 square foot house on a slab foundation. Also did the bath walls. Labor was $4,500. Materials $1,700. Yeah,
I'll bet you anything. South of the Mason-Dixon line, guaranteed. South.
Matthew Mead, howdy, just got to the live. How are there only 40 likes with 60 plus watching?
Agreed.
Because people don't like me. I'm not a likable person. No Mondays, always Saturday. Howdy. That is actually a family member of mine. Did you hit Andy's last question? We did now. We didn't then, but we did now. Thanks, Matt.
Anytime. Happy to participate.
No Mondays, always Saturday, as owns his first duplex and is working towards the next investment purchase coming up soon.
Nice.
Going to be retiring early. All right. I think unless any other questions pop up really quick here, Matt, they can find you at Lumberjack Landlord. You have an awesome course. Oh shit, I'm a landlord. Now what? What do you do after you own the rental? So there's kind of 3 steps right now on the information process. We do have some people like Beth, a top tier agent who can answer questions on the agent side, because me and you aren't realtors. Mike Zuber had his license for a while, but it's not what he does. We have people like Millennial Mike who cover investing at a distance. But the analogy I like is the one that Zuber uses, a sports arena. I'm in the parking lot trying to convince people that financial freedom is possible. Hey, there's a thing over here. You don't have to work more than 40 hours a week for more than 40 years to retire on less than 40% of what you made. You just don't have to do that. There is a way to reach financial freedom in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting the best position. So that's me trying to convert people. I'm not in the convincing business. I'm not going to tell people stocks suck, go for real estate. I'm not going to tell people retirement account. I do say they suck all the time, so that's not true. But yeah, retirement account. I'm not going to tell people you shouldn't do this. I'm saying it didn't work for me. But once we get him in the stand, Zuber's got all of the millionaire experts that come on and explain all of the plethora of strategies that it can take to get on the field and buy one rental at a time. And then you get on the field, then you have the rehab, self-managing, all the stuff on you now own the property. What did you learn in over 20 years of doing this?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming here and sharing your stuff. Your live streams like this are Sunday mornings, 8:30 a.m. Western. And 11:30 Eastern.
You got it.
And then on Tuesdays, we do the Three Amigos with Zuber. And when we can, whenever Millennial Mike is not working, because he works too much, which we're trying to fix, because he works in law enforcement, he's on the SWAT team, and he's always doing SWAT training. We get him on these lives too. And we should be seeing him Thursday on a live where we break into my basement and see if we get murder killed.
I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your 4th. Again, one last time, try to end the day with as many fingers as you started.
Yes.
Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk with Matt. Cool. And we should be off of there